Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur Lindo. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect here at IDERA. We're going to discuss how to use Data Architect to further enhance your documentation with Wherescape processes. So the assumption here is that you're already using Wherescape and you want to move forward with exposing that documentation that came out of Wherescape into Team Server. Now, we have a number of different mechanisms here, and I know we only have 30 minutes, but one of the mechanisms, let me go back here, IDERA Studio. So we have three different editions. We have Data Architect, which is good for your data modeling and enhancing your data models, your both physical and logical. Then we have the Professional Edition, which comes with a repository. This repository allows you to save all of your modeling information into one location, and you can share objects across your entire enterprise and data place. And then on top of that, we also have Enterprise Team Edition, which has an add-on that you can also purchase called Team Server Core. And that's the main component that I'm going to be focusing on here. Team Server Core reads from the repository, and it also allows business users to add additional context to your modeling information. Now, adding this additional context, you can take your Wherescape information and also put it in here. Now, of course, why IDERA Studio? You all are probably already reading ahead of me, but the Wherescape documentation is fantastic, and you can export some of that information and use that in Team Server as your landing page or your middle ground. It's essentially acts as a enterprise portal for your entire data environment or architecture. And this is a place where the business users can then self-serve this information and also enhance this information by adding additional data governance or additional policy and procedures, documentation, and things like that. You're also exposing your entire enterprise data landscape, which could be mapped and easily digestible by a much broader audience. It's like I said, like I wanted to point out, this is a single license, unlimited number of users. And it also gives the business users the ability to enhance and mark up data objects for data governance initiatives. Now again, why IDERA Studio? Again, you can expose your documentation out to the entire enterprise. You can use this for data asset discovery. For instance, if a report writer just came on board and you're asking them to create a specific type of specific report, say orders, they can just go in and search for this information and find this information just through simple searching. You can also define your business keys, find and develop value-added calculations, and so forth. And then you can also, if you find those calculations, those value-add calculations, you can then request that from the Wherescape team. And of course, since Wherescape is very iterative, they can plug that into their processes really quickly and get you going with your BI initiatives. You can also discover customer data use cases, data governance, and audit proofing, your enterprise, and I don't know why I put that. Entire enterprise architecture needs documentation possibly, and you can do that with through Team Server as well. Or if you're starting up a data management practice, or if, like a lot of different companies, you're going through mergers and acquisitions, and you need to document the existing system to apply those rules and constraints into your from your external systems that are coming into that. Now, the mechanism that we're going to go through with this is you have your Wherescape documentation. And what we're going to do, so Wherescape, as you all probably already know since you're using it, Wherescape will source your different sources. It understands your different sources. And then you can define your destination, your star schema, if you will. And then in between that, the middle ground, which Wherescape Red does, will create your staging and loading tables to populate your ultimate destination. And this is what I'm going to do with Data Architect. Document the data lineage used in Wherescape. I'm going to do that in Data Architect as well. And I'm also going to load the models to the repository and publish them to Team Server. Then export the metadata images from Wherescape to add further context to those objects. And I'll show you how I've done this. Now, I've already done all of this. It's took me, I want to say, about 2 hours to do an entire load process for a star schema. Now, let's see if that's right. So going into Data Architect, what I've done is I've reverse engineered the 3 different schemas that are created in Wherescape. There's a stage schema, and I did this for Northwind. There's a stage schema, there's a load schema. So load goes before stage. So there's a load schema, there's a stage schema, and then there's the data warehouse schema. Now, each of these schemas I put into their own specific physical model. Now, the reason I did that is because I wanted to be able to record my data lineage. Now, the data lineage is recorded thusly. I'll right click on this particular physical model, and I can go to the data movement properties. Now, these are all in the same database platform, Microsoft SQL Server 2017, which Wherescape handles very well. And I'm going to specify my sources for this data warehouse. Now, if I go here to, yeah, so go here to the data movement properties, I'm going to specify my sources here, and I'm going to add my source as being the stage and say OK. Now in here, I can also specify my data movement properties for the load, and load has specific targets, and the targets is Northwind stage. And for Northwind stage, I can specify my data movement properties as specific sources. So stage has the source of load, and it has the target of data warehouse. And say OK. So now inside here in this data warehouse stage, I can then click on the particular category name, and I can go down here to the data lineage, and notice I have all of this already populated. This data lineage for category name is coming from the categories table. There's a trim that's put on it before it gets into the stage database, and then it removes, what does trim do? It just removes leading and trailing spaces. So now a user, when they click on this column, they can see that this is defined here. They can also go over here to the where used, and they can see that this particular column is used in both load as well as the data warehouse, and where it's being used and how it's being used. Now, Wherescape also has an output for specific data lineage as well. And what I did is I captured those images, say for instance, the products. One of the images looks like this. So it's coming from the load, and then it's loading that into the load products. It's coming from the original, going into load categories, load products, load suppliers, and then that's going into stage products. And then from stage products, that's going into the dimension products in the DW. Now I duplicated this in the data lineage for this particular flow as well. Now this is a little bit more enhanced than just a specific image, and this allows the user, the data modeler, or the ETL documentation expert to go in here and add additional color. So I can see exactly what columns are being used for the ingestion and what columns are going for output into this particular table. And then of course in here as well for this transformation from load to stage and from stage to prod. Now to document this, you simply double click, and why do I have to check this out? That's silly. It should already be checked out. So I'm going to double click on this and show you what kind of documentation we can include on this. I can specify my source tables and columns here just by checking those, and I can also specify my destination columns and by checking those as well. I can also add a different business definition in here if I want. For instance, maybe there's a particular calculation, and if I want to do column-to-column mapping, I can do that in the code. Now, these are just text fields here. There's no validation happening, so you can put in whatever information adds additional context around these objects. I can also specify my data movement rules if there are any. They're all specified up here, and I can just point them to this object, whether it's an append, a delete, an update, and so forth. And I can also add attachments, which I could go in further, but we've only got 30 minutes, so I'm trying to show you the very high level of how you can augment your data architecture with Wherescape information. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this into the repository, and once I've checked this in, I can then open up Team Server and publish it to this mechanism. Now, Team Server, again, is our web portal here. I'm going to log in as admin. And in the publish models, I have the choice to either publish this, which I've already done, and I can publish this on a scheduled basis, or I can specify automatic publishing. Now, the great thing about this is that once it's published here, anytime a user, a modeler checks it out, makes changes, saves it, and checks it back in, it'll automatically be republished, and the business will have the newest version of all of these. Now, to look at your objects, they can go into ER tools, or they can search for a particular ER object and go into specific projects. They can go into this data lineage, or I called it Wherescape lineage.dm1, and they can go into the individual model if they want, or they can go into the load model, or they can take a look at the stage model and the thumbnail, or if they want to, they can also click the eyeball and go further into this. Now they can also see the data lineage that I created and all of the pieces of that as well. Now, when you click on the eyeball, all of this information is clickable. So I could click on this transformation and I can go in further into the inputs and outputs, and I can also click any of these columns to find out where they're also being used. Now, the business has the ability to add additional notes here, and that's what I did for the model, and I'll show you what I've done. So I went in here and I created a glossary called the Enterprise DW down here. So I created this data warehouse model, and I gave this, in this definition, I added a link to this as well. And this link is just self-referencing that image. So if I go back to the description here and I click on this, I can see the image of this object. And of course, all of this information is clickable. So if someone goes into the products, for instance, I added also additional notes here for that particular diagram from Wherescape. Added this diagram so a person can look at this products table, this dimension, this products dimension, and they can see where this all came from. So they can see the whole data lineage and flow that came from Wherescape. Now, of course, they can also go into individual columns like I've done with, say, category name, for instance, and they can see that the direct source for category name is coming from Northwind Stage, products table, and a category name column. I can also see where this is being used in each submodel. I can see the different notes that are also applied. And of course, I can also see the definitions and so forth. And again, for this object, I can also edit this and add additional information as well if I want for category name. Now, it's not something I really want to do, but I've done this for each of the DW orders. I believe I did it for this one as well. Yeah, so this is the Wherescape image for the flow from DIM products and customers that go into fact orders and then into DIM, and then also gathering information from DIM order date that goes into fact orders as well. And then if I go back to Northwind DW and I go into products, we did products, let's do customers, and we can see the flow for the customers population as well. Now, the neat thing about this is that you can add additional information. So if I go back to my glossary and I go into my Enterprise DW, I can also go into the different terms. I can add terms to this. I created a data warehouse model term. So this gives people a shortcut to get into the specific model that they may be looking for. And then, of course, I added this this shortcut as well. But I can also relate this term to a specific model, and they can link to this. I can link to any of these objects inside here, anything that gives this term further definition. So a person can then go directly into that DM1 file. They can go into their specific models. So say, for instance, they want to go into the data warehouse. And then, of course, they can take a look at the submodel and then view the image directly from here. And then, of course, double clicking on these, they can also see the DDL and so forth. And again, the big benefit here is that the business can add additional information through the addition of notes, and they can also see any changes that have occurred. They can choose to follow any of these objects, whether they're glossaries or terms, and in following, if they go into their home screen, they can go into their particular stream and they can see all of the changes that have happened to all of the objects that they've done, that they're following. So obviously I can see admin modified this particular glossary. This is the old value, and then now there's the new value, because I had this as an image in the definition here, but then I changed it to a hyperlink instead. It all depends on how you want to actually show it. So that's my spiel. Right now, I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie Knowles, who's our product manager for ER Studio, to talk to you a little bit more about IDERA's data fabric.
Super, thanks, Arthur. Can you put the slides up? You're going to show the slides.
Am I not? Oh, there we are, sorry.
No, we can't see the slides. You've stopped sharing. Cool. While Arthur's doing that, so yeah, I'm Jamie Knowles. I'm product manager for ER Studio. So just to recap what Arthur's been showing you. So ER Studio is a tool for data architects to document and design data assets. So primarily operational data assets. We do have some customers that are manually designing the data warehouse as well. Yes. So ER Studio, tool for data architects to be able to design and document operational data assets. Working together then. So the mission is for ER Studio to provide that documentation of what do you want to put into your warehouse. And then once Wherescape has then actually made those changes to the warehouse, to then republish the changes to the warehouse back to the wider audience through the team server portal that you were just looking at. So right here, right now, there is basic integration between the two tools. So within 3D, you can open up a model ER Studio and vice versa. So over time, we're working on quite an ambitious roadmap of connecting those products tighter together, so that the data catalog within ER Studio, within Team Server, is going to be more available within 3D to make those decisions on what do I want to put into the warehouse. So next slide, please, Arthur. There we go. So the next thing you're going to hear about us talking about is data fabrics. This is quite a fashionable term at the moment, and IDERA's got a number of products that are going to come together to form this. So the overall mission is consumers of data. So we want to get data from data sources over on the left-hand side to data consumers on the right-hand side as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So over on the left-hand side, we've got our applications and that have got their operational data stores. We want to take data from that, put it into the warehouse, and then make it available for the BI and analytics team on the right-hand side. We've also got in there the data lake, pulling in data from the Internet of Things that might also be feeding the data warehouse. So within a data fabric, we want to make the whole sort of journey much faster and easier. So down at the bottom, we've got effectively our storefronts for the data. So we've got our data catalog, which contains our business glossary and the data dictionary. So anybody that's looking for data can go and browse through the business glossary, through an ontology in business language, through business terms, find the information they're looking for and say, okay, where is this data? And they can see within the data dictionary where that data already is. So do we already have any data sets available in the warehouse? Yes, we do. Great. I can go and access it. If not, then hey, we do have data available in these. Beautiful, yeah. So this is the storefront down at the bottom. So people can browse for data through the business glossary, see whether it's available, see whether the data is appropriate, and then once the data asset is requested, then the automations occur within the data warehouse through Wherescape. And then once the data warehouse is then updated, the data catalog down the bottom is updated and everyone can see these new data assets that are available. So really what we're trying to do is make that whole process going from left to right easier, faster. Once data is made available, we want it to be well published so people can see that data is available. So we skip to the next slide. So we can see that we've got various IDERA products coming together to really support this journey. So down at the bottom, we've got ER Studio that's providing the business glossary and the data dictionary. We're also building integrations with products like Calibra so we can tie into that data governance story much more tightly. So ER Studio provides the catalog, and then Wherescape is providing the automation of the data warehouse. And for the lake, you also will have heard of an acquisition recently by IDERA of Qbol. So we want to do a similar sort of thing with the data lake. So the data fabric story is I want access to some data through which route do we get the data? So the whole data fabric machine will help make decisions on where's the best way to serve this data, through the lake, through the warehouse, or both. We'll also be looking at things like data virtualization. So so Denodo is part of the IDERA fold as well. So, and then Aquadata Studio in the top right-hand corner helps with the BI and analytics side of things. So again, you're going to hear a lot of from us around data fabric. So again, ER Studio, Wherescape, Qbol, all coming together. So there's going to be lots of integrations that are going to be popping up to really support this story. So we want to have data architecture, analytics, and data governance all working closely together. So we can identify where is information, where did it come from, what does this information mean that's in the warehouse, what entitlements do I have to this information, etc. Good, that is me done. Arthur, over to you again.
Yeah, so to wrap up, if you have any questions, please give marketing@idera.com an email, or if you want to request a demo, you can go out to our website at idera.com, ER Studio Data Architect software, and request a demo. Thank you very much, and y'all have a great day.